Hey, Sach, welcome. Thanks for joining here. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us and chat through, some of the material on this course. But today, the topic is really around operational alpha using AI. But before we really dig into that, I'd love to throw it over to you for a quick, if you want a quick introduction to everyone, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm Sach Diwan. I'm the global head of technology at LaSalle Investment Management. LaSalle is a kind of independent subsidiary of Jones Lang LaSalle, JLL, the real estate giant. Our function is primarily to effectively manage private equity as well as securities and offer these up in the form of investment management funds that typically the large pension funds, sovereign wealth, and other LPs around the world invest in. We are a global investment management firm. We have almost a third in terms of assets across the Americas, Europe, and Asia. So that makes running a global operation quite a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, so one of the bigger shops, to say the least. And we've spoken to small groups and large groups, and they all have different types of pain. So this is going to be really, really fascinating. So yeah, let's just jump right into it. So when you hear operational alpha, what does that mean to you? And when you walk into a firm and look at their back office, the accounting, the reporting, asset management, what sort of value are you looking at from your perspective?
Sure. So when I think about operational alpha, I think back to when I used to work at Northern Trust, and we used to do a lot of operational outsourcing for investment management firms. And when we looked at operational alpha, we looked at how can an investment manager actually reduce the cost of providing the same services to investor accounting, front office support, all of those things that investment management firms need to do on a day-to-day basis. How can they do that cheaper and better so that it actually reduces your overall costs and can reduce that sort of net of fees, charges that's applied to the funds, thus the term operational alpha. And when I came over to real estate, I saw, my gosh, a lot of opportunities where there's so much information that is taken from either PDFs or spreadsheets and basically keyed in to other systems. And you're starting to see that sort of get automated more and more, but that is still ripe for kind of low-hanging fruit, ripe for innovation.
And that's helpful to know. And it sounds like, there's a boil the ocean approach, and then there's like, how do you find those use cases? And I definitely want to cycle back to that. I have another question on how do you go from this abstract to actually technical. But a lot of like back offices are just, are costs that are, accepted as the cost of doing business, headcount, manual data entry, like you mentioned, reconciliation, report generation. So how do you, from a leadership perspective, see those line items and just start figuring out which ones do you go after that actually can move the needle?
Well, one thing that has proven to be very effective in other industries, and I think it's being proven now in our industry, is the ability for various process automation technologies that can take data in unstructured ways and create structure out of it, whether that is looking into rent roll files that may be provided as a PDF from, let's say, a joint venture partner, being able to extract the data out of that and being able to load it into your Yardi without that human intervention. There are tools that are out there that are commercially available, so that can go a long way in reducing not only the cycle time, but the human costs. And that's, you can take that and you look at that across all the sectors. And for a global manager like ours, that could really add up.
Got it. So you probably actually have a really interesting like vantage point on that and on that last use case of like unstructured data and then moving it from sort of left to right. Prop tech, real estate historically has been a very closed wall system. Curious to know from your perspective, like, will that continue to be a gatekeeper for those really end-to-end automations, or are you seeing people soft to the idea of, you are able to throw AI in the middle, but if you can't get data out or you can't get data in, does that create headaches, and is that going to be a headache that persist into the next couple of years or decades?
I think it will persist in the next couple of years. We are an industry still where deals are circulated via email in the form of OMs and flyers, and information is extracted from that and put into deals and analyzed, and then investment committee memos are generated from that. That whole entire process, end to end, there are incremental efficiencies being sort of added to those using AI, making that whole sausage making process faster and better. But at the end of the day, I think that entire sausage making process is ripe for innovation. I mean, why do you need to have deals come in via OMs and teasers via email? Why can't it just go all the way through?
Yeah.
There's far better ways to skin the cat, but at least for the next few years, there's going to be a lot of incremental tweaks on both sides to make it better. But eventually, I think I see in the next 5 to 10 years, all of that will be replaced.
I think so. And we're starting to see that a lot now. And even the word incremental, it's almost exponential incremental. And these walls are starting to come down. But that middle section of when you get the information to when you need to go to IC, where the data is in your court, that you're right. There's more than a lot of stuff you can just do to tighten that window and really get a lot of value out of it.
Yeah, and it's really exciting to see that happen. It is happening, and there's a lot of firms that are working on it, as well as, development shops like ours they're doing a little of both. And we're going to see some really innovative solutions coming out. But at some point, I would really love to see all of these deals flow in electronically, and all of the images and it can all flow in as data that can be used and abstracted.
I'd love to hear your take on this, sort of going tangential to everything we're talking about, is when you talk about that, do you see a world where that's going to be better for you to build in-house? Or do you see a situation where it's better to wait and then to buy that? Or a hybrid of the two?
I think there's always going to be a hybrid of the two. I mean, I would always prefer to buy whenever we can, but there's definitely instances where if it could give us a competitive advantage, then it makes sense for us to build. So I see that as being, that dichotomy as to when do you build and when do you wait.
Got it. Very cool. So let's jump sort of into the specifics, right? Right now, today, where are you seeing AI deliver the biggest time and cost savings in back office workflows right now?
So I definitely see AI in the form of being able to ingest unstructured data, being able to do things like match invoices and save a lot of that manual time. Reconciliations, all of that kind of stuff can be done now in a very automated way. I'm definitely starting to see good progress in terms of putting GPT on top of both structured and unstructured data, and then being able to draft documents. All of that is starting to happen. So, the ability to actually query investment committee memos for the past, say, 10 years, and being able to say, how does this deal compare to the last 5 deals we did in this sector, in this region? That's something we can do now that we really couldn't do a few years ago. So I definitely see a lot of progress there.
Okay, that's exciting. So, you mentioned, abstraction and then analysis on IC memos. Financial reporting. If you had to rank like the number one use case right now that is like the biggest bang for your bucks, if you look at the quadrant of high value to lowest effort or easier effort, what's sort of the one or two things?
That's tough. And, I'm going to harken back to it. I'm always kind of biased towards what can we do to improve processes and sort of completely change how people work. And in that sense, I actually believe that the transformation of the role of the asset manager is actually something I'm starting to see, where you can use data and AI for that asset manager to be doing more exception reporting or looking at exception cases. Why is this month's rent roll different than last month? Instead of them having to research it, the AI can then, give that information to them. So you can use agents to do a lot of that fundamentally changes their role. So that to me is pretty exciting, where you can actually change how people work.
Okay, and we mentioned data a couple times, right? And I think we all know that the analogy is garbage in, garbage out, but also like data is the heart of AI. And we all come from real estate, right? So data is going to be in Excel files, in electronic systems, in emails, on people's desktops. So when you're looking at the firm's infrastructure standpoint, like what needs to be true from the data perspective for AI to get off the ground? Like what's the bare minimum, especially now that, something like Claude Cowork could look across all of those subsets?
I think the bare minimum is that you actually have people who, first start with the building blocks, people who are accountable for the data, and then people who actually have some sense of quality thresholds around that data. Because if you just allow garbage to come in, let's say from property managers, and no one's responsible for that data, and then you just put it into your warehouse and the fund managers are running queries against it, they're going to say, well, is this data right? And you can't just shrug and say, well, I don't know, I'm just the IT guy. You really have to be able to say, well, who's responsible for that data? Who signed off on it? And at what point did they sign off on it? So that kind of governance and accountability, I think, is the bare minimum.
Okay, so I want to push that a little bit further, right? So, we're talking about data governance, which is great, right? It's the thing that's been around for 20 years that, folks like you and I have been pushing, and people are like, we don't want to talk about data governance, let's talk about AI. And knowing that data governance is still always going to need a human in the loop, but is there a universe, or are you starting to see a data governance agent that could do some of that review and start offloading that process? Or do we still think it's so messy that we still need people?
I would love to think we personally at LaSalle will get there in a few years. I think, quite frankly, the whole concept of data tolerance thresholds needs to be sort of ingrained in the culture first and needs to be defined first. Then, yes, you could have agents that do that for you, but you can't have agents just go out there and determine whether or not something is within a reasonable tolerance without a human in the loop. And so we've got to be able to train that. But before we can even train that, you have to have people even thinking that way.
Got it. Have you guys explored sort of like reinforcement learning? And I'd love to hear your sort of thoughts on that, especially as you talk about like a scenario where data's coming through, people are reviewing, they're making fixes to it. It feels like a good spot to start injecting those findings into something repeatable, but again, it's still theoretical. Curious to know your thoughts from your vantage point.
No, you're reading my mind. And we've actually looked at some data quality tools that can kind of help us do that. But first, I just have to get all of the business on board. And so the whole change management piece can't be kind of ignored. That's a big part of it. And you're asking people to do more on top of their day-to-day jobs that they're already kind of stretched thin.
Yeah. We've done a couple of these, and we've sort of we've all gotten to this point where, and I'd love to hear your take on is, should IT implementation sit closer to technology or to business, or in between?
I think the in between, where you have kind of a team of innovation-minded people that come from the business, but they can also kind of crosswalk to technology, is probably what works best. But I think it all depends on the organization.
Got it. Very cool. All right, yeah, so kind of jumping, I mean, we can talk about this for hours, but I want to be sensitive to your time here as well. So looking forward, let's say you walk into a brand new firm, or I mean, I guess it could be your firm as well, and around operational alpha, what's your 90-day game plan look like?
The first thing I would do is look to see how are the rent rolls coming in, and what is the level of effort to review those files, to sign off on those files every month. That should be low-hanging fruit. A second step is looking at deal information that's flowing in. Are people still taking OMs and teasers and manually keying that deal information into a deal management system? Easily could be automated. So those are probably the first two things I would look for in the first 90 days as sort of the lowest hanging fruit that I could pick off.
Yeah, and just for anyone watching that's sort of unfamiliar with sort of this process, right? When you say rent rolls coming in, if you could just dig into like where are they coming in from and why is that a hard problem?
Okay, it's primarily from our third-party property managers, because we're not vertically integrated, so we actually hire property managers, best of breed model, and we could have some people using our Yardi, whereas others will send us spreadsheets once a month. So it really can depend.
Yeah, okay, yeah, and that's the thing, right? Yeah, for folks listening, is that when folks like you all hire third-party property managers, they're using Yardi, Entrata, MRI, Appfolio, Resman, QuickBooks, Excel, and everyone's sending data in mixed match format. And from your perspective, it's only valuable if all that stacks on top of each other. So that has historically been a very manual process. VBA and Python have gotten us pretty far, but like AI, and I agree with you, is the big unlock to get that. A combination of AI and really solid data engineering solves this huge gap in the market that's been around for, I don't know, longer than I've been doing it. I'm sure as long as you've been doing it. So
but
it's exciting.
I'd see a day really soon where an asset manager can just review a rent roll that's been uploaded from a property manager and just say, any exceptions? Nope. Approve. Any exceptions? Nope. Approve. So it's going to be far more exception based. And if there are exceptions, it'll compare the last month's rent roll with the lease and be able to say, oh, well, here's why. And so the asset
Right.
manager doesn't have to dig in and go find out the reason why.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, we've solved that problem, but we'll save. I'll get you one-on-one on that. We won't bore everyone with that. But awesome. Well, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us. We know you're super, super busy. This is really valuable. So again, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll keep this conversation going.
Sure, anytime.